because all I heard was what sounded to me like an attempt to smear these young ladies. I heard over and over for this extensive press conference that there were black people, that these were black kids, that these are the only ones who steal cars. And so I'm left to believe that maybe this is what the officers hear in roll call, because I've sat in many roll call where briefings are presented and an officer may then go out into the field and say, well, we're chasing another stolen car. It's got to be black people. And so when that stolen car runs into the mud or a pond, we may not do everything we can because it's black people.
What you're watching right now is the exact moment sheriff's deputies found out a car plunged into a pond. This is a first-hand account from the front seat of a patrol car.
They're in the water stranded. Give me a unit over on 275, just south of Gandy.
Take a look as deputies arrive on scene at the edge of the pond. You can see them using their flashlights to locate any signs of life. Listen closely and you'll hear them planning their next move.
Let's get rescue out here with a boat. We may have to go in a boat.
Within minutes, deputies make a grim observation. They see someone in the car. Listen to this.
The car's bobbing around. They're trying to crawl out. Looks like somebody at a window. I see a foot coming out.
As K-9 officers arrive, ready to search for victims, they too encounter a grisly scene.
Somebody looked like they were starting to get out, and then we went back in.
According to newly released documents, once deputies realized people were inside the car, they began taking off duty gear and entered the water. It was thick with foliage and natural debris. The muddy and swamp-like conditions made it extremely difficult and hazardous. The vehicle sank to the bottom, and visual was lost. At the same time all this is going on, a sheriff's helicopter is overhead with a bird's-eye view.
Eagle, can you see anybody swimming away, or what do you see?
From up here, there is something just to the right of the vehicle, but I don't see anybody swimming away.
In the end, it was too late. 3 teenage girls died in the car that morning.
At about 3:30 this morning, a Pinellas County Sheriff's Office sergeant observed a 1998 gold Honda Accord that was traveling eastbound on Sunset Point Road west of US 19. The car was traveling without headlights. The sergeant who was traveling westbound turned around. He attempted to stop the vehicle as it turned south on US 19 from Sunset Point Road. The vehicle refused to stop, and consistent with Pinellas County Sheriff's Office policy, the sergeant did not pursue the vehicle, and at that point he was unable to obtain a tag number on the car. That vehicle continued southbound and it ran a red light at US 19 and Drew Street. The sergeant turned around going northbound and was totally disengaged from the vehicle. Another Pinellas County Sheriff's Office sergeant was south on US 19 in an unmarked car in the area of Almerton Road. He observed the car a short time later. It was traveling within the speed limit and normally driving. Because it met the description of the vehicle that had fled from the sergeant a short time previously, the second sergeant got behind the vehicle and he was able to obtain the tag number. He ran the tag and found that the vehicle had been reported stolen by the St. Petersburg Police Department. The sergeant did not attempt to stop the vehicle and he followed it, waiting for other units to attempt a traffic stop. The car continued southbound and was driving normally, even stopping at red lights. There was no pursuit, and the sergeant was far enough back that the driver may not have even known that she was being followed. The vehicle eventually ended up at US 19 and Gandy Boulevard, where it stopped at the red light to turn east on Gandy from US 19. At that point, there was another Pinellas County Sheriff's Office cruiser that was south of the intersection, and we surmised that the driver of the vehicle saw that cruiser, and that was the reason why at that point that she ran the red light for eastbound traffic and accelerated through the intersection quickly. The sergeant and other units followed and then saw the vehicle stopped at the side of the road at Gandy Boulevard and Frontage Road, which is where, for those of you that were out there this morning, that's where you turn south off of Gandy to get into the cemetery. The vehicle paused there for a few moments and then proceeded south and east onto Frontage Road, heading towards the cemetery. It's a dead-end area back in there, and our units knew that there was no way out. The Sheriff's Office units followed the vehicle as it entered the cemetery, and was traveling at about 30 to 35 miles an hour. This is a very, very dark area, and by now it was close to 4 o'clock this morning. There's no lights in the area. And so as they entered the cemetery, driving on that road at 30, 35 miles an hour, it's actually pretty fast for the windy roads, and with it being very dark and no lighting. As the vehicle rounded the curved road at the end of the cemetery, all you could see at that point, looking ahead, which would be south and east, would be I-275, because the cemetery butts up to I-275. And at that point, the vehicle left the roadway and without braking, traveling at about 30, 35 miles an hour, entered into a pond, which would be at the southeast section of the cemetery. The vehicle became submerged in the water. The doors were closed and the windows on the vehicle were up. The vehicle drifted about 20 yards into the pond and was fully submerged within about 5 minutes. The deputies who had been following the vehicle, as soon as it entered the water, they shed their gun belts and other equipment. They attempted to reach the occupants and rescue them, but because of the thick, muddy water, they were unable to do so. It was all, as you can see from the photographs of the car when it was pulled out, it was very grassy, very muddy. The vehicle was covered in muck. So as the deputies were wading out into the water, they were just sinking down. They could not get to the car. The vehicle was pulled from the water, and unfortunately, found deceased in the car were 2 15-year-old and 1 16-year-old black female.
Thank you, Lindsay. Also this morning, in just about an hour, the family of these 3 St. Pete teenagers who died after crashing a stolen car into a pond are going to gather with supporters for a news conference. They are still calling for answers into their children's deaths.
The families believe Pinellas County deputies didn't do enough to save their teenagers' lives.
The family members, as well as their supporters, put the blame for all of this squarely on the shoulders of those Pinellas County deputies. Now, they say those deputies forced these 3 young girls into this high-speed chase where it ended here at the cemetery when those 3 teens crashed and later died.
It's sinking still. No, I don't see anybody.
Extensive, unfortunate misinformation that's going on out there by a number of people with this false narrative, which is just nonsense.
Despite claims of a cover-up, the sheriff of Pinellas County continues to emphasize that deputies acted properly following the crash that killed 15-year-olds Lanaya Miller and Ashanti Butler, along with 16-year-old Dominique Bowell.
In reports that were written by the deputies who took their gun belts off, took their clothes off, and went in the water. Those deputies aren't lying.
Family members have maintained the girls made a mistake that should not have cost them their lives.
My daughter was not perfect. What 15-year-old is.
The sheriff's office has released the full report along with dash cam video on the incident. Family supporters, along with their attorneys, have major concerns over how they believe the teens have been portrayed.
In my opinion, this has been a rush to judgment. In my opinion, this has been a smear campaign.
They can make these bald, wild allegations all day long. 3 girls, 4 o'clock in the morning, in a stolen car, running from the police, and the 3 of them combined had 7 prior arrests for stealing cars in the last year. That's the problem we need to focus on.
First off, I would like to say that yes, my daughter has stolen cars in the past, but she paid for that. She did time if she had to do time. There is no long fight that she was charged with any felonies or anything, because she wasn't, and she has never been. Second off, all 3 of those girls were best friends. They all hung out together. They all took care of each other. So what y'all questioning why they was in the car together? Because they're friends. That's what friends do. They hang out with each other. That car was not stolen. They did not steal that car. That guy picked them up, a 36-year-old, 15, 16-year-old children. First off, that's a child molester to me, because you have no right picking up children that young if you don't have anything else to do with them. About going to get a TV. What do they need with a TV at that young age? It's not right. The stories are not right. The stuff that the news people and everybody else report is not right, and the facts are not right. And I'm, as her mother, is going to get down to the bottom of this, regardless of what it takes, because I don't like how y'all are slandering my daughter's name. and making her look like she's such a known criminal when she's not such a known criminal.
How many cars did she steal?
So at this point, it doesn't matter how many cars she stole. It matters how much that she didn't do, what she didn't do, and that she did not steal that car.
So we're not slandering someone if we're telling the truth.
So you're not telling. So you're not telling the truth.
So
What you?
All three of these girls have criminal histories for grand theft auto. And I'm just going to run through those briefly. You can see on the photographs it's laid out here as to what those criminal histories are. But Butler has been arrested in 2015 for retail theft, for being a runaway, for auto theft, for burglary, for auto theft again, and for trespass. Miller had been arrested in March of 2015 for grand theft auto. And Battle was arrested in November of 2014 for burglary and trespass, February of 15 for grand theft auto, March of 15 for grand theft auto, May of 15 for failure to appear, June of 15 for failure to appear, July of 15 for violation of probation, home detention, November of 15 for grand theft auto, December of 15 for burglary, possession of marijuana, and failure to appear, and again in January of this year for grand theft auto. At the time that she died, she had an outstanding warrant for violation of probation on the burglary charge. So between these three teens, they were arrested 7 times in the last year just for grand theft auto. This situation is very frustrating because 3 young lives have been needlessly lost. It's also very frustrating because it is yet one more example of what's really become an epidemic occurring in Pinellas County and specifically in the city of St. Petersburg. We've been plagued for over a year with excessive auto thefts being committed by young, primarily black, young people. Most of the young people live in South St. Petersburg, but steal cars throughout Pinellas County and in Tampa. When they steal the cars, they engage in other crimes like armed robbery, drug distribution, and then dump the cars or run from the police and abandon these cars.
It's been 1 year since 3 teen girls died after plunging into a pond as they ran from deputies in a stolen car. Today, their families announcing they plan to sue the sheriff's office, saying deputies didn't do enough to save their girls.
The sheriff was extremely stern in here and saying those claims are all false. In fact, going as far to say they're all made up. But the family says they have proof those teens didn't have to die that night.
We are going to fight, fight, fight.
1 year later, this mom still questions her daughter's death.
What were all the officers that were out there that night?
It's going all the way down.
It's the moments leading up to Dominique Battle and 2 other teens' deaths that's prompting her and other family members to sue the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. First, they questioned whether the teens actually stole the car they were in that led deputies to follow them into a dark cemetery. Then they questioned why deputies, as seen in this dash cam footage, didn't jump in the pond to save them after they plunged into it before drowning.
If they really thought they had a claim, why didn't they file this a year ago?
Sheriff Bob Gualtieri is quick to shut down those claims.
It's ridiculous, and we did nothing wrong.
He says there's proof deputies did what they could.
It's the middle of the night, it's dark, it's muck, it's mud. They weren't going to die themselves.
He challenges the families and their attorneys to offer proof.
You know, if you got it, bring it. Otherwise, be quiet.
Today, they're accepting that challenge.
I hope to gain justice for Dominique Battle, Lanaya Miller, and Ashanti Butler.
The families turned in a letter notifying their intent to sue. They haven't filed a lawsuit yet, but they say they have extra proof to back up all of their claims.
Bullshit! Well, Kelly, the day started with the families announcing that lawsuit against the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, and then Sheriff Bob Gualtieri went on the defensive. His message has been consistent for the last year. He says the 3 deaths here of these 3 girls, the blame falls on them and on their families, and then came tonight's vigil.
Justice will be served!
They shared stories and embraces.
Dominique, Lanaya, and Ashanti will never, ever be forgotten!
In memory of 3 teenage girls, Dominique Battle, Lanaya Miller, and Ashanti Butler, who died exactly 1 year ago. Friday was an emotional roller coaster. The day started with attorneys in front of the Pinellas County Courthouse.
We will be
filing an intent to sue the Pinellas County Sheriff's Department.
They say the car was only 15 feet from shore and floated for 5 minutes. The families claim deputies stood and watched.
It's going down now. I hear him yelling, I think.
In their fear, they held each other's hands so tightly. Hours later, when their bodies were recovered, they had to be pried apart.
The family's attorneys also say the car wasn't stolen and the chase was unnecessary. But Sheriff Bob Gualtieri is standing firm.
You know, there is no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that the deputies did out there at the scene everything that they could.
The girls' supporters accuse the sheriff of fabricating what happened that day, but the sheriff says he's not the one making up stories.
They can make up all the lies they want to make up. They can try and create some story that doesn't exist in some fictional tale in Disneyland, world, because that's a bunch of nonsense.
And the families claim that the girls didn't know that they were being followed by deputies, but the sheriff says that during the chase, Kelly, those girls were sending messages to their friends, bragging about running from the cops.
Hold on. So I think that kind of going after mom is a little improper. What we're doing right now is we're still having an ongoing investigation as about what is going on, what actually occurred, what happened. Just because Dominique, she may have had a little bit more of a criminal history, does not still, as Mr. Anderson and I have talked about, does not, if you steal a vehicle in the state of Florida, you don't get the death penalty. And essentially, this is what happened. These girls died. And there's a strong belief that that car actually was not stolen. And there's a good faith basis to believe that the car was not stolen. And without going into everything regarding the the things that we're still investigating, that's kind of where we're at. And once again, we invite you to talk to law enforcement, to go ahead and go to the scene.
And I have a question. Yeah, I have a question. How can you steal a car if you leave your keys, leave this car running? That is not stealing.
Well, if the owner didn't give him permission, that is stealing.
But he had them in the car. He had
They drove off without saying, "Hey, can we take your car?"
He claimed he was in the store.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. Because the store that he claimed he went in to get a TV don't sell television.
So, ma'am, it's your belief that you let them have the car?
Come on. A 36-year-old man, is you gonna own up to that you got these 15 and 16-year-old girl in your car? Would you own up to it? If you didn't have other criteria, would you own up to it?
So should they be looking into this man then?
Yes. That's what we want.
And I'm not here just to get justice for my daughter. I'm here to get justice for all three girls. Because I know all three of them personally. And y'all not going to sit here and slander their names.
When was the last time you saw Dominique?
I saw all three of them that night. They were at my house that night.
I seen them the day before. And they used to come over to my house to eat dinner. And all of them was like very, when I say polite, they were very polite.
Why were they out that night? How come they ended
Why
up
do teenagers do what they do?
All right, guys, thank you all. We're going to close. I just want to applaud Miss Dominique's mom for coming. We, at this point in time, the Whitfield Law Group does not represent her at this point in time. I believe this is her first time making it.
Well, we're chasing another stolen car. It's got to be black people. And so when that stolen car runs into the mud or a pond, we may not do everything we can because it's black people.